So thank you, really. This is a humbling experience for us. I truly love the conversation that we started these years ago with Villanti, and I hope that it continues. No, and so let's see. First, we're gonna start this way. I'm gonna show you a song, and I'm gonna show you certain images that I really hope they make sense more along the way. I'm just gonna show a couple of projects that more or less tune in into the framework of how we work, and then we'll go directly to how our studio work, because our studio is also a project. So here we go. You let me know if you can listen to this. This is in our studio, your studio. And this is how our studio, where we work, usually looks. Not only, and our studio, you'll see, is full of designers and architects and some scientists, but the community uses it as a place for them. But then, well, guys, the lockdown happened to all of us, right? So, and sadly, in our home state here in Baja California, it was in this neighborhood that was the leading of cases, of active cases of COVID in the state, right? And so we started doing stuff that we didn't know we were gonna do, from distributing food, to triangulating with doctors, to talking to the police officers, to talking to our neighborhoods, and started to managing what are we gonna do together to start to have certain sense of, let's see what we can do now. And like everybody else, and I mean, we had, I don't know, insurmountable losses now in our team, like everybody's living right now. So now, who we are. Torolab is a loose-based collective effort that very much focuses in other people's ideas of how to live better. And it's through these ideas of how to live better that we focus and we start a process in which we understand that we are not going to tell Cesare or Marta or Nandini what is their idea of quality of life. They're going to tell us. No, and we have to be humble enough to understand that our careers, whatever this may have been, architecture or art or anthropology, is not enough. No, maybe it's about food. It's about our, I don't know, our physical security. It's about economy. So we will go with economists, we go with sociologists, we go with people in sciences, and we start these multidisciplinary efforts that somehow connects us to transdisciplinary results. To this, 1/3 of our team calls it antidisciplinary practices, and 2/3 of our team call it contra-disciplinary practices. This is not to say that we don't understand the value of regular careers and pathways of learning, but that we have to reevaluate them and see the other type of processes to have better results. You see, because some of these ideas of quality of life can be linked into, I don't know, decadent luxury, but all others are linked to, I don't know, necessity at the level of your skin that has the poetics of survival. And with that, we have to work, right? And with this, we divide our work in two aspects. One that somehow does these landscapes and portraits and ethnographies and geographies and installations and stuff that somehow, well, to tell you the truth, they're nothing more than contextual analysis, if we call it in the language of architecture. And then we do systems that integrate into other complex systems, no? And these systems have to be alive, and they're transversals in terms for them to survive. So right now, I'm going to talk to you about a couple of systems. And so maybe we can understand each other, and this will give us a clue to go to the farm. The first one, we call it molecular urbanism. And molecular urbanism is somehow, I mean, it's how I don't know, we anthropomorphize as human beings. We do think that somehow connects to other bodies, no? And we do bodies in relation to ours, right? So if somehow we study our body, we can connect it to the larger body of the city somehow. And we have studied from temperatures and the way that we relate to each other to ways in which we envision the idea of our vital space that which is inalienable to us, and that we only let in the people that we love. But when we live in a country that over 50% of the population lives under 50 square meters for over 4 persons per family unit, for living unit, well, maybe the street has other responsibilities, right? And if that is the case, what is the point? That is something very important in times of pandemic, right? And the one that I'm going to talk about is one that has to do with our everyday relationship with food, our body, and the body of the city. With this, you will start learning how we work. First, a university in Mexico that has a doctorate in food engineering and that has a wonderful architecture and art practice, that is University de las Américas in Puebla, no, ask us to do this visualization of how the bodies of the Mexican people have changed in relationship to the city in the relationship with food, that bridge, right? And we, with that university, another 3 universities, UDLA, UPAEP, and Universidad Iberoamericana in nutrition, in anthropology, and in gastronomy, and along with our hosts in food, in the doctorate of food engineering and arts. The result was this, guys. And I'm gonna try to be as fast as I can because I can be here for hours, but we try to envision a map, but the map is this bread thing. No, we tried to do a tortilla, it was impossible. It's more like a ciabatta bread, right? But if you only eat that bread, right? If you only eat that bread, it has all the missing ingredients in the Mexican diet, all the missing elements in terms of vitamin A, B6, C, D, E, iron, and calcium, and it has 9 grams of protein unless you eat the vegetarian that has 16 grams of protein, according to the last 6 census, National Census of Health. Right? And then we did something called Coma, which is the Mexican Cooperative of Workers of Food, right? For students in architecture and arts and food engineering that had these performatic aspects about them. And then we had to build this moving oven, no, in which nothing is fried. And then we turn it outside. I have to say that other person that helped us out are the person who do the marketing tasting tests for PepsiCo, which owns Frito-Lay, McDonald's, and Coca-Cola, right? And then we put this thing out in which it was, you know, we designed this thing from the engineering, from the first bite, and how Mexicans eat with one hand, and then we sauce it with the other, and then how we build these organoleptic landscapes of senses, right? Because it not only it smells good, looks good, and feels good, and actually tastes good, at least for the Mexican palate. And then there is the problem of I don't know, heterogeneous design, right? Heterogeneous taste, which is impossible to get. You lose the edges, right? And it's very hard. And Mexico is very unique in the way that they confront food with authenticity, no? Because if you overdo it, it's a little hipster. If you underdo it, maybe it's not safe enough. I mean, you have to have a certain thing. And then we did this tactical thing, understanding where were the delivery trucks of Frito-Lay and PepsiCo with this question that said, what did you eat today? No? And every time that we put it out, we sold out, guys. No, and I'm gonna move forward. There is a lot of things to say about this, but this is one of the aspects of something that starts like a contextual analysis and then become a system that sustains itself and even monetarily. No, it has, I don't know, I can talk a lot about this one, but let's move forward. Another project that we can talk about food, from what we have done for the government of Los Angeles and the Institute of Contemporary Art over there, to what we have been doing for Harvard University in the GSD. For the guys who know it, we took over their dining hall, no, to get money to bring more people from Latin America to this place, no? And I promise you, there were 2 blocks from the Carpenter Center and Kennedy Center all the way to the GSD to get in the line, and we were not giving it away. And we also, the thing that we have done with the Department of Education of MoMA with the capital exchange dinners, that is not about what you eat, but who cooks it for you and what that geography means, right? The next step, it was home territories. That talks a little bit about something that we call in Mexico, you know, the nuclear family or the American way of life, that depending what is the, my goodness, if it's McCann Erickson or Ghibli or whomever is telling you what is the American game of, the American way of life, it could be something even perverse, and I don't understand, no? And we have this situation in architecture and urbanism in Mexico called cartera vencida, in which social housing, if you have it, people prefer to lose the credit of the house and go live near habitability and life than having to live in inhospitable places in which there is no livelihood. There is no fun, there is no connection, there is no other human beings, and it takes you 2-3 hours to get to your job, and that means, 6 hours a day is impossible, right? And so we started to look into the idea of home territories, but with the idea of not what is the norm in a central vision, but what we can learn from living in the border here in Tijuana, and I'll talk more about it in a little bit later, but it's what is outside the norm, which maybe it's easier for us to talk about it, no? And maybe it's about human mobility and migration and refugees and extreme migration from weather or wars or something. And we started case studies. This is one of those case studies that we love, that is called the UMM farm tapes. And the UMM farm tapes, actually what it is that, I don't know if you know the UMM community. It's a community very much like the Hmong community that you can watch in the movie Gran Torino, right? They have this culture of 4,600 years in which they do farms, no, agricultural farms, and then they build them, and they move every 10 years. And they have this beautiful tradition of oral tradition and music and sound and poetry, but they don't have a nominal written language, right? And then prior to Vietnam, a lot of them helped the American government in recognition of the mountain areas outside Vietnam to enter Vietnam. But then, of course, you know, the United States went away. Some of them went to Laos, got bombarded, other went to Thailand, and they were put in refugee camps that were not a refuge at all. No, I mean, these camps separated families, no, mothers from fathers, kids to their parents, which is horrible. It's a crime. And then 10 years later, no, like in 1985, more or less, they were people in the US who really pushed forward, and they receive a lot of them in Seattle, Washington, in Portland, in Oregon, in Sacramento, in California, but a bunch of them in Oakland, California, that you of course know that in the past 15 years, it have had these problems according to the FBI and other police sources in narco traffic, medium narco-traffic, exchanges and gangs. And so instead of moving every 10 years, because you can't, no, and you're living in 10 years, you move 7, 8, 9, 10 times, right? And now let me tell you something else really briefly. Let me draw this picture of this dining table in which the father comes, and maybe he was an incredible, I don't know, businessman of the cloth and the farming and stuff, but he didn't learn English well enough. So he has a really bad job, and then he starts with alcohol, and then he goes to something else. And then they separated the family for 10 years. And I mean, the kids are starting to learn who they are in adolescence, and their only connection that they have is this man that they see in front of them in the table, and maybe, I don't know, maybe he's intoxicated and he doesn't have the elements to understand what is going on with him or with himself. And then he goes outside, and the gangs of Mexican Americans and Black don't accept, and they have to do their own. So the only one who can really do something about it is the mom, but she doesn't do it because of culture, because it's something good according to their culture. But now that she's in the United States, she can change, I don't know, she can divorce, she can study, she can do a lot of things, but she doesn't do it because, I don't know, she wants to go be a good woman. But here is Lyon, the one that you see in the middle with the 5 kids, the man and the mother-in-law, which is the little girl that you can see this in the refugee camp. No, but in the point number 7 and 7 prime, the oldest of the kid and the second to the oldest, one got shot and the other gun got stabbed. No, so she goes to the police and to the schools and said, my goodness, teach me how to speak to my kids. And she's not speaking about teach me how to speak English, but teach me how to communicate, because there is a cultural gap. Right? And she became a translator, and she became a unique part of the project that I'm going to describe to you. So this project, we did it together with SFAI, with the San Francisco Art Institute in the city studio, and with CCA in social practice in the arts with Ted Purvis, may he rest in peace, no, and with an incredible artist, Julio Morales, and then we went to this organization called IBASI that support Asian youth in the Bay Area, and then we proposed it to the government. Then we asked for money for the USDA, and we made a list of 6 acres, 5 minutes from downtown Oakland, and we started this organic farm that my ex-university in the campus of Berkeley helped us get the pediment of organic, which is very hard, and we started to sell whatever was being produced to primary schools who wanted to change their diet. And then we did this tianguis that goes outside the school to take out these human parents, no? And to let them, not only for the money that is for them, but to have conversation with other parents. And I mean, and then we started to do this audio archives that I would love to talk about them later, but I want to move forward. No, because I want to get to our studio, and we're finally here. No, and our studio is called the Transborder Farmlab, or program, because it is a program. I'll just hold it a minute. And or La Granja for short, the farm. And our studio, let me tell you the story of it. You see, for the people who know Tijuana, you won't let me lie. You know, it's the last or the first northwestern corner of Latin America, and it's part of this axis from Baja to Vancouver that a lot of things happen. It's the entrance from China, Korea, and Japan to Mexico, right? And Tijuana is the most important territory in this border region, no? Since 2003, it has had like close to 96% of all the homeland security resources in terms of people from the southwestern border with the United States. And sadly, and it's a very vibrant city, you know, and it's completely different. Well, the conditions, even the proposals of projects, if you live in one side or the other of the border, it completely changes. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. It's just the way it is. It's an uneven condition of power that we have with California, right? And right now we have had, since the pandemic started, 1.5 years with a closed border. We have the largest land border crossing in the world, no, with more border crossings, but it's only closed for Mexicans, guys. No, it's not closed for Americans. In fact, a week and a half ago, there was a concert of 40,000 Californians here in a beach in Rosarito Beach in Tijuana, which is ridiculous. No, and we cannot cross to the US, which is again ridiculous, right? But and sadly, there is a story that connects it to my home state in Sinaloa that tends to go in tune with the cartels, right? And since the 80s to the 90s, but it exploded in the 2000s with the advent of new governments and a strategy called the war on drugs, that things exploded. And for Tijuana exploded from 2005 to 6 to 2008. It was horrible. According to some sources, Tijuana became the most dangerous place to live in the world because of crime. And then 3 years later, the same thing happened to Ciudad Juarez, my home state in Sinaloa. It's always sadly in contention, but it's different there. There is but I don't trust these numbers, right? I mean, we have to, because there were conventional wars in other places in the world, but just to be considered one of the worst is bad enough. So what the project that I'm going to discuss to you has 3 scales: a metropolitan scale, a city scale, and a neighborhood scale. In a metropolitan manner, we started with a team of people that we love: a young politician, a professor of economy that was advising the state police, Juan Jose Alonso Llera, the young politician Carlos Torres, a businessman, Don Alejandro Bustamante, and 2 old professors of architecture of ours, who were at that time the city planners of the city of Tijuana, Tecate, and Rosarito, and were doing the strategic planning for the next 34 years. And they allow us, it was a weird time, and I don't want to get too much into it, but the government knew that they were overwhelmed, and they accepted ideas. And it became a wonderful time, right, to propose things. But it was a horrible time in living condition because of the violence. And I'm not talking normal violence. This is large-scale violence. I mean, these people don't use regular 9mm guns or shotguns. They use rocket launchers and assault rifles, And anyway, so we propose a new strategic axis, along with Arquitecto Rodolfo Argote and the team that I'm telling you about creative practices that can build innovation from the ground up, using design, architecture, art, music, and stuff to build new type of economies. We did that because we have a very weird system of government in Mexico that change every 3 and every 6 years. So how do you make impact for stuff that maybe the first stage of your work is in 12 years, not to impact 6 million people, right? And you can only do so much, and everybody's trying to do their brand. So this was just to be in a document that will last for over 20 years, right? That was the first stage. Then we started to do new maps, because our people in the Planning Institute started to tell us, there is a difference in between what the central government tells us to the local government and the information that we have. So we went to friends of ours. One of my closest friends is the director of the Red Cross, and we went with the state police, with the local police, to universities, to centers of CONACYT, which is the National Council of Science and Technology. And we started to do new maps, from normal monetary gain to normal poverty to nutritional poverty, that I can tell you later. Ask me later what that is, which is a Mexican measurement that is unique to us and is different from the food deserts. And then the crime rate. We were not measuring only normal crime, but high impact crime, which goes beyond kidnapping, killings. And then the thing that we took a lot into account, it was people committed not only to state and local jail, but juvie too, right? And then we started to do these new maps to concentrate and see our 3 pesos that we had in the bank, because we knew that these guys were going to try to help us out. But to tell you the truth, the help came months and months later, right? So we paid for the first months of this project until we started to get help from other places and universities and work and stuff. So welcome to Camino Verde. It was just to choose the place that our 3 pesos will have more impact in, right? And Camino Verde is the first or second, according to the Planning Institute, is the informal settlement of Tijuana. The first one was gone in 1986. Right, and it's a very small settlement of 50,000 persons, a little more, a little less, in which 43% are single mothers, and 72% by the time they're my age, they're becoming great grandmothers, because they start having kids when they're 14 years old, and they're the head of the household, not in a social way, but in terms of putting money on the table. 72% of the family. It used to be called Grupo México, now it's called Camino Verde, which means green roads, but not a lot of roads and not very green. And these were the images that you saw of this place before we went in, right? These were the news that you started to see before we went in. No, and Tijuana, if you have visited or you're from Tijuana, you know, right? There is a bunch of hills and 3 valleys. We all live in those 3 valleys, no, Tai, Mesa, Playas, and the very rich and the very, very poor live on the hills, which is very dramatic because in Tijuana, it doesn't rain a lot, but when it rains, it's biblical, right? And in Camino Verde, which this is informal settlement that started to happen because there was an informal bus station from people trying to migrate to the US that was put very close by. It's called Cinco y Diez. And then they, well, it's very hard to cross from Tijuana. It's super, super hard. You put your life in danger, right? So a lot of people stay here. So they started to do these informal settlements in the hill. But sadly, after this rain, dozens of families drowned in mud. First, they said it was 14 dead people. There were not 14 dead people. It was a disaster. So we tried to get in there at the end of 2009. And we took this picture. And behind me, there was a police station, guys. And this police station, like in a Philip K. Dick novel, I don't know, super dystopian. It's 2-story, no, for 2 big trucks, and it was completely abandoned and all tagged. And there were these guys selling this drug called Cristal to kids, no, that makes cocaine look like something social, responsible, and ecological. No, and if the kid didn't have money, they would just give it away because it's super addictive. And let me tell you what happened too. I mean, the government came and built 4.5 kilometers of a cement canal and did this main street and a few secondary streets with water, drainage, and electricity, but not for everyone. So 3 things happened. First of all, we do have problems with race, of course, in Mexico, but in class is horrible in Mexico. They build a new class because you now have electricity and running water, right? But not for everyone. The second thing that happens is that they build this canal and they organize the gangs in 2 gangs, one side of the canal and then the other one. No, and they will charge you to cross the freaking canal. No, for goodness sake. I mean, in a place of border, you have a new one. Look at the scale, guys. There is this guy, this adult over there trying to cross. So there were places that it was over 12 meters, that is bigger than a 5-story building to cross, and it had bridges, right? So they will charge you, no? I mean, I guess that the smartest thing that they did it was this football field that was made with cement and is 3 times thinner, and it has a 12% inclination. So if the people of Camino Verde are playing Barça, I mean, they have a chance, no? If the Barcelona is going uphill, right? It's ridiculous. And the worst thing of all is that they invest millions of dollars and they don't invest in programs like the one that you have in your university over there, that you have creative people thinking in way that we can reconnect design, no, to the social fabric and the way that is the development of the territory. And it's impossible that in less than 23 years, these maps happen in a place that you invested millions of dollars. No, and if your city does, like the federal government says, is 1.5 million persons, and you actually have over 3.5 million persons, there is not enough money that they're sending you from the federal government. No, you will always be reactive, right? So it's insane. So we have a reactive environment. So with this, I'm trying to say infrastructure alone, the building alone, infrastructure is not equal to quality of life. We have to think in another manner, right? And then we try to enter, guys, and I only have 15 minutes left, so I had to hurry. And the police officers stopped us. I mean, over almost 500 elements of the police force got arrested by the army, and the army took over the city. And then the federal police came with these tactical units. It was like a war zone, right? In this era, no? And they told us, please do not go in because we are gonna have to make operatives to get you out, and we're not going in. And that's not the problem, because then we figure out, because we started to see all these little factories of crack, of this cristal crack. And we saw some police officers, and then the problem was that not only the problem was that the taxi drivers wanted to charge you like $10 every mile, no, which is every kilometer. That is a lot for Tijuana, and sometimes the urban transport didn't want to go in. The garbage trucks didn't want to go in, guys. I don't want to tell you what we found in the first 36 hours trying to clean the canal with neighbors. No, I mean, our job was this. The other guys were going to try to get federal help, whatever. And we were going to try to cover the canal and make the pluvial infrastructure down, because we don't have terrain in Tijuana, just like New York. No, we don't have terrain. No, so we will do it, and we will build on top of it, whatever. If it was a community center, a boys and girls club, a library, a dispensary of medicine, whatever it was needed. Our job was to start working with the community to engage them, so there was participation, and to measure if it was possible to have participation. And then from there, do a unique program that is not cataloged in the federal government. So welcome to Camino Verde, guys, right? That's where we went in. So with the life, first we started with 1,600 per head of household, and I can discuss later in the question and answer why head of household and not only young people or kids, or and so with the life of and then with groups of 800, and then smaller groups, focus groups of 100 head of households, we started something that we call the cookbook. Now I'll tell you all about it in a minute. So in a following the life of Polo that comes from Michoacán, or Elvia that comes from Guerrero, or Alma who comes from Durango, that is the first person who I met while going there, and then asked me later what happened. The first thing that she tells me, what are you doing here? You're gonna get yourself killed. No, what are you gonna give me? $100 is the $200, which was what the. And right now she's still working with us, but it's very unique what the story of Alma. Or Lorena from Sinaloa, that according to the Colegio de la Frontera in Baja California, we're the majority of the migration to Baja California, no? The people from Sinaloa is quite unique, no? And with the live, with using the best professors of literature, no, with classes of reading and writing for head of households and creative writing, using the way that you eat and cognitive elements that we started to learn in the doctorate of food engineering at University of Las Americas. We established this document called El Recetario, that is actually a manual of tactical and social urbanism, that with teams like the ones that you have in your university, we can do projects together. And the project that we decided to do with these families is called La Granja, which is briefly what we decided to do with three hypotheses is, well, if in Mexico, first of all, the first thing that you lose in our country when you're in economical trouble, if you don't give money to CONACYT, which is ¿cómo se llama? Science and technology, is very hard to support culture. So what about, at that time, we said, well, what about if we go the other way around and let's see if it works? The other thing is, when we see, is the first thing that you lose is the social mobility, public space, and tools of resilience that allow you to get to the productive aspect of the territory. So what about if we work on those things, and instead of being a strategic asset for the wrong reasons, and not only for the government, becomes a strategic asset, not only for investing, but for culture, for academy, for other type of production, even science. And lastly, we think that if it works here, we're pretty sure it's gonna work in Ensenada, in Mazatlan, in Johannesburgo, or Medellin. No, and this was the idea. We started we started to get support, and we started to do the infrastructure, and we did the casting of this thing. It took us 3 years. This is the model of the 3 years of the casting, using 3 years of newspapers of Mexico City and Tijuana. No, and then we started to map out the 911 calls because we started to see that it was only in the street that had electricity and streets where they were the 911 call. This is in 1.5 months before us going in. And the places that really deserve it to have a call, no, were not being called for. But look at this. This is a very important picture. No, this is before we managed to build in a house of security of the cartel, and I entered with the army when we got it. It's turned into a boys and girls club. We managed to do a, ¿cómo se llama? Community center, a football field, a public library, and other stuff on our place. But before we put anything on top, before anything, before there is a, look, people are using this. So this is beyond the social sculpture of Joseph Beuys, no? It's beyond just putting the oak trees. It's who's gonna take off those trees, no? It's the structures of belonging, no? It's what we call in Torolab social afforestation. And that's what we aim for when we're working. There is a guy sweeping dirt, guys. Who the freaking freak sweeps dirt? That's because that person feels that place is his, right? And then this, in the place where one of those phone calls, it didn't work. I mean, they didn't, how you call this? I'm sorry, my English is going away. I'm getting tired, guys. I'm sorry, but let me go. In the territory where the most of the dangerous of the gangs used to reside, we went and negotiated with them. And this is not regular gangs. These are guys who are 60-some, who are working with, because in a city that is October and you have 3,500 homicides, and it's not even the end of the year, there is not enough guys to put in with a Kalashnikov, right? So these are not normal gangs, let's just say that, right? And so we build this. And the idea of, and we started building a street that gave water, electricity, and drainage to 21 families. And we built our bunker of love that we can discuss more about the design later, but the idea was to do something with the material. And instead of having this condition of things that will go away, like all the promises of the government or even religious groups, right? And this place is still informal. Well, what about if we do a life commitment and my son Adriano is gonna grow up with your son, with Mael that I'm seeing here, and with Mario and Fer that is still here with us in the farm, right? I mean, my son is gonna grow up with your son. We're screwed, but we're screwed up together, right? And that changes the conversation and the levels of security for everyone, right? And we work with a residency, an art residency and a scientific residency in the 7 network of CONACYT with people in ¿cómo se llama? I'm sorry, I said I love ¿cómo se llama? In applied sciences, and I'll talk a little bit about it in a minute. So, for example, we have had people like Manfred Reiner, Stefan Winsperger, Hannah Hollinger from the Bogenklauser, the Ghana think tank, have gone 3 times. Our friend Tauta Venga was gonna come on 2020, but you know what happened, and Jonathan Hernandez and all these incredible creative people. Let me just put you one example of how the residency works. First, you have to do something which you finish your dissertation, your investigation, your piece, but you give something that is of value to the people who help you build it, no, that builds certain capacity, and then you take it back for transparency, and you and you, ¿cómo se dice? I'm sorry, and you have accountability, right? And you show the work to the community, right? So we had these problems of cycles of vengeance. So we took with Manfred Reiner and Stefan Hollinger, Hannah Hollinger and Stefan Winsperger, one of the Titus Andronicus of Shakespeare that really deals with that, with cycles of vengeance, right? And we divided into workshops of video editing and use, audio editing and use, the script writing and acting, and with 33 families. No, they rewrote the play and called it Tito. We didn't have money to make a play, so we made a movie. It was presented not only in the Venice Biennial, but also in 2016, it got the Latin American Award in the Latin American Film Festival for Best Documentary. And in the Austrian American Film Festival, it got Best hybrid documentary, but it has, you know, the patina of somebody who's not a filmmaker. It's just these three families. And now we did one with Candide from Voltaire about how to be an optimist when you don't have nothing to be optimistic about. There is the guys of Ghana think tank, New Yorkers and Bostonians, right? And Diego, the guy who you heard at the beginning, who didn't speak at the first moment that we got him. And it was nothing physical. And with the Orchestra of Baja California, we started this program with viola, violin, cello, y violoncello. That's all the money we got. No, and we made him speak with a violin. This guy has played in Milan. He's now a professor of music. The music that you heard is the Mexican thing that we put in the golden disc that went to the Voyager 1, no, and that we can discuss in another time, right? And this is one of our Mother's Day when we didn't have the pandemic, right? And the thing that we work with our bodies in relationship to performance and acceptance not only to other genders, but to respect to your body and space. No, and the thing that we do, this is one of our associates. We belong to something called the Norte Collective with experimentation in sound. Look what they did with our kids. Just a few seconds. This is Christopher Chichelmishai, a guy who went to school with me at MIT, did the Center for Civic Future Media. Look, this is a sculpture that gives free Wi-Fi to our neighbors. This is another sculpture that we did with some members of Torolab who knows telecommunications that connects to the Universidad Autónoma de Baja California, to the medicine department. And in a place that you don't have social health, right? This connects you to a doctor in in 18 minutes, you have a complete bioanalysis, no? And we have found that a person who had a cardiac condition and cancer and didn't know about. No, that pays for this sculpture in itself. And what we do we have had 2 graduate schools dissertation and 1 doctorate dissertation in ubiquitous computing and artificial intelligence. One is about mobility in places where the Google car cannot go in, no, and what does mobility means, and the other one is about subjective well-being, no, and if it is possible to measure stuff like fear or happiness. And the families who help us go to our computing and coding and robotics club, our COCO club, no, and with this university we started neighborly intelligence. That's where the applied social innovation research lab comes in, is just to be humble enough to go outside our studios, no, and test out our theories, no, like Arquitectos de Cabecera that gives support of architecture. Look, this is a house for 7 people in less than 25 square meters, no, to give service to people who really needs it and cannot afford it, and in which the street, no, becomes something else, work in that street too. And then we started this movement with the National Council of Technology, and universities like MIT help us out. We started something called Urban Intelligence, and we took the best heads in ubiquitous computing, AI, machine learning from the country to not only to share stuff, no, but to think in ways that they don't live, they're working papers, right? And it goes beyond the paper and can have impact in the real world. There is Mario Silo right there from City Science of MIT that gave us money to finish this thing, no? And then we tried it out in Guadalajara, but then it hit us. And of course, in less than a minute, outside our studio, well, the farm, it is a farm. And we have over 40 fruit trees in a place that they said we could not have trees, no? And half of our studio, our physical studio, is a laboratory of gastronomy that we do with the Culinary Arts School. You see that guy in the blue cap? That guy, we took her from the guy. He is working in Spain right now. And from there, we take our sustainable model. Look, guys, we have worked with people in Medellin, with Alejandro Echeverri and friends, and they told us something, and I know my time is out, just give me less than a minute. And but the state police came and told us that in the first 6 years of this intervention that we did, they told us that 85% of criminality went down. Our friend Alejandro in Medellin told us this took us almost 9 years with the power of Antioquia. No, that is a powerful state in Colombia. No, we cried. I mean, right now my skin crawls right just by thinking I got a lump in my throat. Even if this is half of it, it's unique. No, of course this fluctuates according to whatever happens. If they get chopped or whatever. What's next, guys, is that it's impossible that for 50,000 persons there is not a one junior and high school. So we're doing one in which the problem is not the space, the problem is how we do a program with our scientists, with our technologies, with our body and what we eat as part of a program. We can do something world-class that can come out of a place like Camino Verde, right? And that's it, guys. No, so there you go. There is a bunch of things to talk about. I mean, it's 26 years of work, but I don't know if I'm not sharing the screen. Villanti, let me know. Did I stop sharing the screen?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
Raúl, thank you so much. I mean, it's a wonderful and rich journey. And as you say, it's 26 years, very hard to encapsulate in 45 minutes. I picked up on one phrase that you used where you said that when the conditions are horrible, something like when the conditions are horrible, it is a wonderful time to propose. And in a way, architecture is a form of propositional thinking. It was thinking through making propositions, quite different from like what social scientists might do as, or scientists, they think through analysis or analytical thinking. So, and you have, in fact, given us this wonderful taste of, the power of propositional thinking as it gets rooted in a place and grows and connects. This last project that you showed us, which is a kind of, I mean, it's an educational system, right? You also spoke about how you go from analysis to making systems, that is to connecting things. And one, again, a unique thing I saw, I would say, is that your systems are connecting things that are in fact connected in everyday life, but just tend to get disconnected in disciplinary thinking, way too much. So with that, I just want to have the opportunity to allow our students and other faculty and people who are listening to ask you questions, whether they're about specific projects or about these systems that you're building. I'd like to open the floor and have, Cesare and I will moderate questions.
don't worry about it. I know I bombarded you guys with information. I'm sorry. No, and I'm also sorry to say that I wish I had a little bit more of time at least to share a couple of more projects. But before there is any question there, let me just tell you one thing. Torolab, like I said, is like a collective that builds collectives. Now we have living collectives in other parts of the world and in Mexico, Mexico City, Mazatlan, Sinaloa, in Philadelphia. We have a team member in New York. No, we have a couple of team members in Milan, in Lisboa. We have a bunch of people in Vienna. And really, we have a large group in Barcelona that would be very interesting if you can invite one of those guys, because one of them became the city planner. No, Josep Buigas. But what I'm trying to say is we work collaborating and adding up, right? So if anybody has an idea that think we can add up to their idea, just write us through Villanti, or I'll put my email down there and we can think about it. Think of this like an invitation for collaboration, right? And that's it. I'll keep quiet.
does anyone want to pose any questions to Raúl or just
Maybe-
Ray, go ahead.
Thank you, Raúl. So you've spoken about your relation with, I love this last sentence, so Torolab as a collective that builds collective. And then, so the relation of you of Torolab with the various communities you engage, with the cartels, and but very little, in fact, about your relation with the government. I'm curious, so how you, so both in Tijuana or in other situations, actually engage with, say, municipalities. And I'm also curious to say if I was thinking about so ways in which so some of these strategies of intervention might be scaled up. And I'm also thinking, so why did you ever run for public office? So why, so sort of, why not, so is there a way to think ways in which municipalities might actually come the work?
I lost the last part of your question, Cesar. Just the last little bit of the part when you said
I was asking. I mean, it's a provocation to say that. So why don't you run for public office? Why don't you become and avoid, let's say, the building of those concrete canals? So is there a way of thinking of these strategies, so not coming just, let's say, from civil society or from groups like yours, but so what's the role of the government, let's say, in these processes?
My goodness, Cesar, because I am not, I don't have the condition enough to do it. I mean, I'm not masochist enough. Look, I come from a family in which my father really tried to push things that way, and it's a really rough road, Cesar. It's a really rough road, and in Mexico it's quite unique because if you think about it, in these governments that keep on changing and they're 3 years and 6 years, there are three things that really separate the people in Mexico, no? Talking about religion, football, of course, soccer, no? And politics, right? And so when we do projects, we can work with a smart, or what we consider a smart government, but it's not about political parties. It's more about the connection with somebody who is understanding and engaging what we're doing, right? And if we can work that way, so be it, right? But then we started, and that's why they started to invite us to not only to architectural and art schools, and in schools of applied sciences, but in schools of economics and entrepreneurial, because we have to do systems that sustain themselves, right? In order for us to keep on going and proposing other stuff. And I think that the combination of using creative practices in art and the thinking that we have in architectural schools are uniquely qualified to do proposals for this type of projects, right? That's my take on it, right? But I won't fight it if somebody from my team does it, right? They have done it before, but for me, Cesare, oh no. And I can tell you stories, terrible stories that are connected to that, right? To political environment and violence, right? That I don't want to go through them again.
Hi, I have a question too. So I don't know if you mentioned it sometime when you were talking, but why did you initially only recruit the heads of household? And did you come across any issues? Because you did mention that there was somebody that you had spoken to, and she was wondering, you know, why you were even doing that, and insinuated that it was dangerous.
Well, yeah, thank you, Lourdes, for the question. Also to you, Cesar. I mean, look, Lourdes, that question is very important. Let me tell you why. At that time, in 2009, 97% of the federal projects for social projects and social policies were aimed at young people and kids, right? So there were more support to that, and the rest was with women. And of course, we have an aging community in Mexico that is, people don't realize, but we have a lot of elderly folk who cannot even retire because the economy doesn't allow them to retire, and that keeps them young. And it's ridiculous, but it's true. And the idea of head of household is that we knew that we could get support from certain groups of kids, but if we managed to work with the head of the household, we could have support from more members of the community and the family group, right, Lourdes? But it's very hard. It's super hard. I don't know in other places, but in Mexico, it's super hard, and in some places in the US that we have worked before. No, and so what we established, you see, for example, with Alma, the person that we were speaking about, right? So Alma comes, no, and tells me, yeah, well, what are you doing here, mijito? Te van a matar. They're gonna kill you. No, I mean, what are you gonna give me? 1,000 pesos, 5,000 pesos, right? I mean, and it's true. I mean, what I'm gonna tell her? No, if your life, look, listen to this, Lourdes. If she worked from 7 o'clock at night to 7 o'clock in the morning, she comes from the red zone, and then she takes her grandsons and her kids to school, and then she works in the school, so so the utensils and stuff is easier for her, and then she feeds them, and then she has 5 hours. No, 5 hours to sleep or to do whatever, to study, to have a boyfriend, a girlfriend, whatever. What can I tell her? The less you have, the more valuable that is your time. So first we start to establish a connection. What can we do together? And this idea of giving something valuable, instead of just coming like the government, like when the census come and they ask you for your time, and you live in a place, maybe in other place, but in a place like this, what have you done for me? Right? So we took the most important literary figures of Baja California, Roberto Castillo, who translates Bukowski in Spanish and multi-award books like Daniel Salinas Basabe, Enrique Jimenez Ejival, and they become professors of reading and writing, and then creative writing for these groups of head of households. And then that takes, we give something. The less you have, the more valuable your time. So we have to give something that is as valuable as your time, right? And then we establish a connection, and we start to get to know each other. So I don't know if I really answer, but to tell you the truth, all of those head of household that we met over 10 years ago, they're still there with us. So those connections stood firm, right? That become, and then, for example, you go and visit our studio, even with the pandemics and stuff, and there is not a tag in it, right? And it's not the police, it's the neighbors who are protecting it. It's theirs, it's not our studio, right? And even now that the government closes down because it's a public space, it's not only for us, right? They take care of it, and they have keys, and and I really don't know if I really answered it well, Lourdes.
You did. Thank you.
All right.
It makes sense. Thank you.
No, thank you for the question.
And just to clarify, Raúl, what you're saying is that many of these heads of households are female, right?
Oh, yes. Yes. You saw Polo right there. No, and
Yeah.
and there is a few men, of course, but yes, there is, and it's not that we're trying to work with gender, Villante. It's just that it's part of the context, right? I mean, they are who are making the decision for the family, at least from the 43% who are alone, and for the 72% that even if they're not completely alone, they're the ones who are putting the money on the table and making decision for the family. Right. No, so we have to take that into account, and that gives you a different value of processes and aesthetics and communication that is unique. No, and the most unique aspect of it, everybody from every place. No, they come from Central America and Yucatan and Durango and Sinaloa and everywhere from the Caribbean and Central America and Mexico. And the connection that sometimes they come and it's their first months there and they don't trust the neighbors. So we become some sort of mediators, no? And our studio become this mediating space, if you will. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you, Raúl. It definitely does.
May I ask a question? Raúl, thank you very much. Raúl, I am a professor at City College, but outside of City College, I'm also a board member with a medical group, small medical group, that goes down to Central America annually, an American group. And we work with local representatives down there, non-governmental, all of it being non-governmental. I find that when we are least effective, we are compromising the work of the national health. This is Nicaragua, El Salvador, Panama. We are compromising their efforts. On the other hand, when we're most effective is when we fill the gap between the patient and the public health, the national health. That's when we're most effective. And I'm curious, it sounds to me you're perhaps more of the former, independent of the national. Do you find that is effective? Do you think it would be more effective to be kind of filling the gap? Perhaps the gap is so big that you have to be your own entity in that way, your own collective, as you said.
Look, Ali, and thank you for the question and your work. But listen, I guess that you will understand what I'm trying to say here. The case of this particular project is unique. If you want in another time, I can show you stuff in Mexico City or in Los Angeles, in other place that is different, right? But most of the time, this one was unique because of the conditions of violence. People in the government were listening, and they knew there were gaps, unique gaps. And sometimes this type of work work that Nandini and Villanti was telling me about before entering here. I mean, sometimes this work, you think about it and what you're doing over there, people may think, why isn't the government actually doing it? Or why isn't, I don't know, sometimes another entity doing it? What are you guys doing it, right? And that fluid space, it's a unique place to make projects, but you have to be aware. I mean, there is one thing, I'm gonna try to translate it in English because I'm thinking in Spanish when I'm really, really tired, like right now, but we like to add up, to sumar, to collaborate, y no estorbar. Let me see how you say no estorbar. Not to be a disturbance, I guess, right? Not to be on the way, if you will, at least of the other players like you or like us who are already there. So we take it, and we have to go. It's very different, right? If we go here in the place that I show you, there's some neighbors and some guys. I don't want to say this, but let's just say the bad guys are part of the stakeholders, right? That you have to deal with. In other places like Barcelona, you go to, I don't know, to ¿cómo se llama? Poblano, or to other places. And the stakeholders are guys who study their masters and PhDs in anthropology and stuff, and it's very different, the entities that you have to deal with, that they have a history and they have a method and they're very professional and stuff, and you have to be aware. And then like if you're investigating technology, like if you're reading your papers and doing your stuff and you find that link that they're not doing, in which you can help and add up, right? And where you are needed and where creativity can arise, right? And there are other places like this one that are completely ripe and beautiful to establish something anew because everything is needed. And in fact, either the government or the entity will say thank you if you do something, or if you just want to enter. In fact, we had to do another etapa, how do you say this?
Period.
Excuse me?
Period.
Another thank you, another period of our work in which we were inviting associations to come on over and help. No, and it was hard to do, right? People didn't want it to go in. No, right now we started working in a place in Mexico City that the police officer don't want to go in. No, and it is what it is, right? And then the neighbors are aware of you, and the really cool neighbors become like what Lourdes was asking me, you know, one of these head of households. No, and that's super unique, no, to be working with them, and they allow you to do other things that sometimes the government cannot do. Now, I don't know if I answered your question, Ali. I hope I did manage to arrive to some sort of conclusion.
It's a pleasure hearing you speak.
Thank you, Ali.
I can ask a small question about, you know, you collaborate with a lot of different universities and you teach yourself as well. Could you elaborate a little bit what the role of a university is? And also I found it interesting you started to mention universities when Cesare asked you the question about the governments. And how you could expand or have something that's more stable as a kind of element to your practice. Can you talk about that a bit?
Of course, Nandini. I guess that we've never been able to get out of the university system since we started, right? And never. And it has become like a comfort zone for us to keep ourselves level and to find innovation, no, and to be able to, for example, to go places like where Ali was asking me about, that you go and there is all these NGOs, right, and that have this history, and sometimes in poor countries, you know, the poor NGOs, you may not think about it this way, but sometimes they're fighting for the same support and stuff, and it's really rough, right? So you have to make sure they understand that you're coming from a place where they feel comfortable making relationships with you. That's in one side, right? And the other one is governments, no, or even investors, right? And sometimes universities want to do special projects. And so we started this program like Urban Intelligence, Neighborly Intelligence, the Laboratory of Applied Social Innovation, no, in which we do special projects, no, that tend to do with real projects, with real projects that we're gonna build. And our job is to make not only the connection with them, with the context, the complete context, political, social, economic, and stuff, and make these spheres of safety for the project and for ourselves. And then we can invite students and stuff. But most of the places that we have the most uniquely satisfying projects, Nandini, it has been when we work either with science institutes of research, the university and graduate programs, or when we collaborate with other artists. And when we can combine all of them together, it's fantastic, right? So it becomes like a leveler, no, of conversation, a unique place for innovation, and a place for us to find, I don't know how to say this, but you need to take care of yourself when you're doing this type of projects, Nandini. It's a little bit tiring, right? And the universities become this place where we can breathe a little bit better. I hope it's some sort of answer.